Okay, so time to pack out the parking lot over some of this track, not all of it. You can see I painted and ballasted all this. Like this won't get packed out. It's just sort of open ground here, but there's actually a pavement section in here and across the track, and it goes down this way a ways, and then out, sort of curves out that exit way by Axton Steel, which I'll show you later from a different angle. But so how do I get, when I pack out track, like how do I mean, I did it with this barge set. You can see how I used paper rubs, right? Like over top of the track, and then cut the paper rubs out and then laid them on plastic as templates to get these shapes here. I CA'd a shim, styrene plastic shim on top of the ties with CA. I roughed up these ties because they're funny Delrin type plastic, and they won't take the solvent well. So that's how I did this whole deck like that. So yeah, it was quite a bit of work, believe me. And you know what's really interesting as well is look at what I got left. That's it. That's my leftover when I scribed up all my material. So just enough, you know. A few scrap pieces left over. These planks are pretty rough on this deck. I got some photos of it, but it's been replaced. Or there are planks, you know, random planks replaced all over it. Because the fresh water is just horrible to wood. It's worse than salt water. So the last plank, right? And I'll just nibble it off here. I kind of messed up here, actually, to be honest with you. Well, I'm going to clean this up a bit, but I don't know what I was thinking here. Jeez. Put a big patch in here, and it's not even straight, this line. I guess I'll scribe that and clean it up, but anyway, it's the way it is, right? Must have been tired at the very end or something. In this case, I don't want to use plastic because it's too expensive, right? This is different. I didn't mind investing time and money into this because it's a worthy model that deserves that kind of larger part of the budget, I guess. But in this case, I don't want to use plastic in the same way I did on the barge approach and rack because it's just not cost effective. And I have quite a large area to cover. It's sort of a unique area the way all the track is you know, packed out up to the rail height. Now, a lot of people like to use plaster and stuff, and that's fine if you want to do that, but I don't like to use plaster. It builds up weight too fast. It's unstable. It's messy. But a lot of people use it, and it looks pretty good. But I'm going to use balsa wood for a couple of reasons. Number one, I have lots of these sheets on hand from my radio control model aircraft days when I used to build big flying models with electric motors. So I used a lot of this. So I have quite a bit of it on hand. So I want to repurpose it here on the River Road Model Railroad. And so it's the perfect height. It's just a hair below the rail, actually, outside of the right-of-way. In the center of the track, it's a bit beefy, but I can either sand it down or maybe go with 1/16 or 3/32 probably, but we'll worry about that later. So how do I get this piece you know, how do I cut a pattern to fit nice? There's several ways you can do it. You can actually freehand and eyeball it too and sand with a board sand and then cut it. I've done that before. But in this case, I'm just going to use a paper rub because it'll be easier to do some of the other pieces So I'm going to lay a piece of just printer paper in here, and I'm just going to tape it down in place. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a pencil rub. Just take a pencil and then just rub it across the top of the rail. Okay. It's going to pick up all the detail, like even the points here. See, there's the point even. You can see it there. Like, that's how good this method works. So there's that first line for my template. And then I'm going to do the same here. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to take this up. And I'm just going to cut that on that line. You know, I found these scissors. Actually, I got them from my wife. They're the sharpest scissors I've ever used. I'm not kidding. I've had a lot of scissors. I don't know why these ones were. And they're these cheap, called Durasharp. Stainless steel, made in USA. I guess there you go, right? It says made in USA on it. You can guarantee it's going to be good quality. Okay, so I'm going to cut those pieces off. I'll save this for this part between the rail and the reef there. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this on like that, and then I'm just going to cut that out. I'll have my piece, okay? If you're wondering why is he putting plywood down on his track, balsa wood underneath here. Nice soft balsa. Which will be a test piece for my asphalt surfacing. I like to do test pieces, as most of you know by now. Just, you know, when you mix any medium, it's always a good idea. Take the time to test the surface you're applying the other medium to, or paint, or whatever. Unless you're doing it in an area where it doesn't matter, then you can just cover it up. Okay, so what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to take my plane and I'm going to shave the bottom of this to fit over top of the ties a bit, right? We'll just see how it fits first. Okay, it's just a tad tight, but that's okay. We can just touch that up with a board sander, okay? Okay, so I got this slab all cut. What I did was I took it back a ways here. It doesn't go all the way to the rail. It actually just sits down on the ground and ends a few feet before this rail. But this line came out really nice. But how do I accommodate these ties? If this is 1/8 thick, it's the perfect level to pack out to the top of this rail. 1/8 balsa. How do I accommodate these ties on the throw bar here without it running in and getting jammed under there? What I do is I just take one of these sanding sticks. I show how I made these from scrap plywood on 7-ply. If you go back under videos chronologically, like wheel back a ways, you'll find it's called the Modeler's Best Friend, and I made these in different grits. You just lay all these strips on top of sandpaper with carpenter's glue with weights on it, and then just trim them up. I show how to do it. Check it out. These things are just lifesavers in a pinch, man. And if you like to scratch build, and you're a model railroader, these are your best friend. So I use this to form a rabbet right here within, like, took me 20 seconds. You lay this on the bench and you just sand the whole thing across and it just hogs down like butter. Okay, so here's another asphalt slab, so to speak, that I cut with a paper template, and I want to just put a bit of a rabbet or reveal here. The actual ties will only come about halfway here, but I like to give a little extra just in case, you know, it doesn't really matter. and then just run a line all the way along on both sides. Right, the ties sit underneath there, right? Okay, and then what I do is I just take my sanding stick, 60 grit. It'll hog through this in no time. You just follow the line, push it through. It'll bulldoze the balsa out of the way. Just take your time. Use the whole board sander or sanding stick if you can. Check it. That looks about right there. Right? So now look. And if you're doing level crossings, oh my goodness, this is easy. Right? Look at this. Look how nice and level that is. It's perfect, man. You can't, like, it's, see? Perfect. And if you need to hog it down a bit, it's so easy to do with balsa. And when you're done, you glue this down with carpenter glue, pin it, weight it down, and then you can just varathane it once or twice, and then base it out with a flat gray, a primer gray, and then you can faux paint it. Or you can just spray bottle India ink. Like, just there's 101 ways you can use your airbrush, washes, wet on wet. You know, it's really like doing concrete is up to, it's an individual thing, right? But I mean, I'll show you how I do mine when the parking lot's ready. But anyway, 1/8 balsa, it's cheap, it's flexible, it's easy to machine, it's easy to fix, it's easy to glue, it's easy to paint. It's lightweight, you know, it's stable, okay? So I varathaned this rabbit, like this thinned out here, there's a coat of varathane on here just to stiffen it and seal it, and it'll bite good to CA here. And then this is just open grain balsa. Which is down on top of carpenter's glue. So once again, I cut this piece from a paper template, and when you do this thinning of the edge to sit on top of the ties, if you use this method, I like to run a brush stroke or two of varathane. Make sure you do both sides of the edge. That way it'll stay totally straight, and it will stay straight. But if you just varathane one side, it'll curl up on you or it'll deflect or warp. But if you do both sides, it'll lay straight. And then once the varathane dries, it has a coating that loves CA. I mean, CA bites to varathane membrane like incredible. It's incredibly grippy. So that's why I use it, because when I lay it on top of these ties here, it'll, that thinned rabbit section will bite in real nice on top of the ties there. And then if you want to sand it later when it's dry, you can do that too, because the varathane sands very easily if you want to tweak it below the rail a bit. Okay, so I've sealed all this balsa wood here with urethane, just to seal it up nice. I like to seal my layers because it keeps them straight. It prevents them from lifting. You know, because as each year goes by with a layout, right, they absorb moisture and then they dry out. And I find that, you know, I've seen some of my models after 10 years and, you know, I put extra effort into them and they really hold up well. So, so I'm just going to, I just masked this center off because I don't want to get any down inside of this rail section because I haven't packed this out yet. I'm going to get some probably thinner balsa. So we'll see. Maybe I'll do it the same way I did this one. But I'm going to use this here. It's golden fine pumice gel. There's 3 grades of this. There's fine, like it's all matte. Fine, there's medium coarse and very coarse. And on it goes. And I find that this stuff is perfect for HO scale asphalt. I find grout, like I know a lot of people use grout or plaster, but I find that grout is just too aggressive. It's just too coarse. The same goes for their ballast, right? I never use HO scale ballast because it just simply is not scale enough for me. I mean, if you're into fine scale, then you know what I'm talking about. This will dry with a nice, almost blackboard, you know, coarseness, but a little bit more. So it's sort of transparent too. And you can write on it with marker, like colored pencils, beautifully. Oh, it's just, it turns it into a beautiful surface for, like if you like to use weathering pencils. Just got to get into a bit of a zone here and then just make one pass here. That should do it. There we are. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint this now gray. So this is balsa wood, and then it's been sealed with a coat of urethane just to absorb, because you don't want the balsa to absorb all your paint, right? And if you pre-coat it with urethane, whatever, satin, flat, even gloss, it probably doesn't matter, but I like to use satin. It'll suck and absorb up and give you more of a sealed layer so that the paint will be more opaque. So the idea is to, okay, that's another layer, right? Balsa, urethane, now gray, any gray. It doesn't matter. Like I'm using this cement gray by Vallejo Air. You can use Tamiya JA, Tamiya JN, craft gray, sky gray, whatever you want, right? And then I'm going to lay this texture paste over top. And the reason why the texture paste, like some wonder, why does he use that? Well, because it comes, like it has translucent qualities to it that pay dividends later. Like it's transparent, right? But it's different courses of grit. Like this is why it's artist supplies. There are artists that paint canvases and they demand all this stuff. That's why it's been manufactured. And it makes for great product for model railroading that a lot of people are just not aware of, that's all. And why not add more options to your kit, right? I mean, model railroading is actually beyond painting a canvas. It's way deeper than that. That's part of the fun. Anyway, so I'm going to lay a texture over top of this. Like I've already got some other practice pieces I've been doing, kind of like the water effects too, or anything that I paint with layers. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to try, put some darker washes on, and then I'm going to lightly sand the surface. You know how, like a lot of car modelers do that, you know? And it works wonders for hard surfaces like this. Okay, so, and then because when you sand it, it goes flat white, like a matty kind of grainy substance. Well, we'll see how that looks, right? Okay, so balsa wood, urethane, your favorite gray, and then texture paste over top. Okay, so let's have a refresh or just summarize where we're at right now and where we've come from. So this pavement surface began with 1/8 balsa, and then I sanded back about 1/2 inch where it sat on top of the ties on the outside of the rail. I'm not doing the inside yet. That I'm going to do last. It's just a little bit different application because of the flange clearances and so on. And doing it out of wood, there's some ways of doing it that you can have it nice and clean. But just forget about that right now. That's not important. We want to get it all cased in, and then we'll do the center track later. So this is 1/8 balsa. It's been faired in nice, and then I took a knife or a sanding stick, right? And I just sanded it down. It's very soft, the balsa wood, before it's varathaned. And you take it down just a little bit below the rail height. And you never have to worry too much about that. Like, you should try to get it down somewhat. And if you have problems where the wheel rides up on the balsa, like later when you're troubleshooting, well, you can just knife that away and then patch it with paint, like to look like it's asphalt patches and stuff and rust and decay and that. So you don't have to worry about that, right? Because it's not going to be perfect. Like, I think I put photos in the community tab and you can see, right, like the pavement and like along where the edge of the rails and how it breaks away and stuff and sort of rots and decays and, you know, rust and black and gray and chips and so on. So we don't worry about that. So when it gets hogged down like the 1/8 balsa wood, then I varathane it to seal it. And the reason why I do that is because the first sealer sort of sponges up and gives you a sort of a rigid surface on top of the balsa to put the texture paste on. After you put the paint on, though. Okay, so it's balsa wood, varathane it to seal. And if you buy a pint or whatever varathane, it'll last you the whole layout and then some. Trust me. You don't, like, that stuff goes a long ways. Then once it's sealed with varathane, you just take the gray of your choice, craft paint, whatever. It doesn't really matter, right? Although quality of paint does matter if you're an advanced modeler and you're working in processes and layers, you'll, like, those guys will know what I'm talking about. Like the more advanced modelers, okay, that have been in the game a long time. Just in case you don't know. Okay, so balsa wood, varathane, then the gray paint, right? Then I skim coat it with coarse molding paste or fine pumice gel. Sorry. I'm going to do coarse molding paste first. I'll tell you why. So what I did was once I did that, then I painted it. Like, jump over to this side. So this has been done like this, but now I painted it again. And when I painted it, I can look at it like I can actually read the tooth, like the texture. And I thought, nah, that's just a bit too aggressive for my liking. It's not really to scale. It would be quite, that would be like rough limestone or something finish, right? So then what I do is when this is dry, then I just take my board sanding or sanding stick and I just sand it down. I begin to knock it down. And then you begin to see, like, I mean, just that alone starts to make it come to life. Like, you have to, like, just try it yourself and you'll see. Now I have a pattern here, sort of a microscopic pattern to work with. So I have washes that can create illusion, and now I have microscopic texture as well. With those fundamentals happening, that's how you're going to get a really good pavement that will pop, right? Okay, so now I can knock this down easily enough with a sanding stick. This is 120 grit. This is 220, 120. Now, like this right here, this I'm liking. This needs to be re-skimmed like this. I'm going to paint this, I'm going to sand it down, and I'm almost there. I think I probably will be there, and I probably won't need to do this, even though I said you should try this first because you might like it, because, you know, maybe smooth concrete would look more like this. But you can see, I'll just show you this test strip here. Like, you can see the different textures here. Like, if you put them on a black piece of paper, this is coarse molding paste. Coarse pumice gel, that's really lumpy and gravelly. Fine pumice gel is actually a nice sandy kind of finish. Then we got fiber paste, which I use for tree trunks and, bark texture, which is really nice. This is crackle paste. Now, this stuff is hit or miss. It's where you put it on. It's very similar to coarse molding paste, but it'll crack on its own when you put paint on it. It'll do all kinds of crazy, maybe uncontrollable, but it really looks good, especially around the edges of things. But It's a bit of a learning curve to learn to use this, because if you put it on too thin, it'll just act like coarse molding paste and it won't actually crack. But this one, I put a little bit of beige paint on and it cracked a little bit, okay? But the thicker you put the crackle paste on, the more it starts to crack. So it varies with thickness, okay? This here, since I'm on this test piece, is glass bead gel. Okay, this is really good for water, for little rapids, for creeks and stuff, like a little trout creek, or you know, those kind of babbling creeks, mixed with soft gel gloss. And then there's the soft gel semi-gloss, which I use for the water, because see, it's pretty shiny too, right? But it's not overly glossy, which I like to avoid with scale models, because like this kind here is just a bit too much anyway, for my liking. And then there's this heavy molding paste, which you can use for molding up really thick textures and so on, okay? So I'm pretty much going with this coarse molding paste on the left here and then sanding it, all right? Okay, so let's just talk about the finished shade here for this asphalt type, bleached kind of asphalt. And like I say, it's subjective for everyone. You can use any kind of paint you want. It doesn't matter. I'm using Vallejo Air because I like this paint for my own personal reasons. And I think it's this fantastic range of colors. If I want to reproduce the same surface in another area, I can do it because I have a numbered system. If you want to mix your own colors, that's fine. I do that all the time. But in this case, I want to keep it simple. So the first thing I did was, let's revisit again in closing here. 1/8 balsa wood, right? For my road, parking lot, concrete pad, whatever, okay? I seal it with varathane or any wood sealer, but varathane is what I like to do because it's waterborne as well. I do that because I don't want the wood to act like a sponge and soak up my paint. I don't mind if it soaks up varathane, because I'll put the first layer of gray onto this surface, which in this case is 71.045 cement gray. This is an excellent gray, and it works really well with this concrete color, like these two together. And there's a third one I'm going to show you in a second. So this one is 71.131 concrete, 71.045 cement gray, and then I'm going to use this as a dark wash after at the end. 71.053 dark sea gray. These are the three colors that is all I need to do this surface. Okay, let's throw some water in here. I haven't heard from James for a while. He's a theater guy. He understands the dirty water concept. This is that's what we use in film and theater. Like to weather down, like all the buildings you see in movies, they're all fake, right? And they're all weathered, like you can't tell. Like, well, I mean, it depends on the painters, you know, like what kind of crew you have. But man, the stuff we used to do with just dirty water, like tinted water, with just umbers and grays and stuff, incredible. You just do it the model, the same technique, same theater, film technique. You just miniaturize the application, and you do the same thing. That's all it is, my friends. I mean, that looks so cool. Like if I take a little tiny brush and just do that, just take some paint and just put a little, like just flood some water down and then just touch a little tiny paint, it just makes a beautiful oil stain. Dark sea gray, right? Don't use black. Black, it just doesn't look right with black. Stay away from black for like, use it to darken things, but don't use it straight on the model. And a pin wash is just diluted paint. That's all it is. Don't kid yourself. But it's convenient to have it. If you buy it like that at a hobby shop, you know, that's fine if that's what you want to do. But eventually you'll learn when you play with paint enough, and if you work with wet on wet acrylics, you'll realize every color is a pin wash. You just up the water volume, and it's good to go. Well, I'm really liking that. Boy, I'm really liking the way that's coming out. Boy, I'm really starting to get into it now and have some fun. See? A few layers of texture. That coarse molding paste or pumice or even texture paste. A couple layers of gray. Sand it down to knock down the aggressiveness of it. And look what you end up with. You end up with just really cool. There's sort of a funny anomaly here of the plaster I didn't paint, but now that it's, like, see how it's lighter here? Well, I'm going to leave that. Like, that'll be, maybe that was some patchwork or something that happened, right? From corrosion. Wow, that looks cool. But don't be discouraged when you first start doing it. Like, if you stay with it, like, it takes about half an hour to get into the zone. Like, before you really start to get into it. And it happens to everyone. I know, because I've taught it. I taught it in the university when I was art director for Stagecraft. I taught kids how to do this. And it was fun because they all had their own style. And after a while, once they, like, the look on their face when they really started to get into it was just a joy in itself. Okay, so this is looking pretty good too. See, it's starting to, wow, I'm really liking this, I'll tell you. I'm really liking this.